You're listening to the Geek Saga podcast. This episode features audio from a discussion panel that was recorded at DragonCon 2023.
I am Jennifer Liang. I am the High Fantasy Track Director. My pronouns are she, her, and welcome to Worst Person in Westeros. Okay, and then to my right.
Hi, I'm Nami. I go by Nami Sparrow. I am a cosplayer and a general nerdy person. I also do historical costuming as well, and I do DEI work in both cosplay community and historical costuming, and I feel like I said something else this morning, but I can't remember what that was, so that's the end.
Hi guys, I'm Tara Lynn, and you can find me everywhere at a Geek Saga. I am an author, an event planner. I ran Ice and Fire Con, the first ever Game of Thrones Song of Ice and Fire convention, for a decade. On a little bit of a hiatus right now because I needed a break after 10 years. But I also do some podcasting, Sagas and Sass, which is a genre lit podcast, and the Geek Saga podcast, which is my main one that tends to be all over the place, but generally you can find panel recordings on there. So.
Hi, my name is Seth Lockhart. I am a cosplayer. Also, I run a website called Book Buzzings for authors to be able to announce where they're doing signings. And I also run a Atlanta Sanderson fan group called the Cosmonauts.
All right, so heads up, when I first envisioned this panel, I scheduled it at 10 o'clock. So I was imagining something a little raucous. However, in order to make sure I didn't have any Lord of the Rings panels scheduled against Elijah Wood, I had to move some things around. So I could not mark this as mature because it's too early in the evening, so let's try and keep it kind of mellow, guys, like keep it on the down low. So yeah, I promised my boss that I wouldn't let it get out of control. So if it gets out of control, it's my fault. Sorry.
I mean, in fairness, if anybody's bringing their kids to a Game of Thrones panel, I would have to say that they would be the worst person in Westeros.
We are going to talk about some poor parenting decisions today. Okay, so speaking of poor decisions, I was a little bit more disorganized than I wanted to be, so I don't have the brackets up on the screens, and I did not get a chance to print off brackets for you guys to fill them out. But we do have Kevin here. Yay! And Kevin has chart paper and a marker.
Taking it back to the 90s.
It'll be fine. So Kevin is going to help us keep track of our bracket over here. I apologize for those of you who will never see this bracket. We'll shout it into the. We'll try to keep you updated. Okay. All right. So I'm envisioning this as we're going to actually vote as an audience. The panelists will debate for a few minutes. We'll let you guys vote, and then we'll progress people through. If you're wondering how we got this particular list of people and how they were ranked, I did several polls over a couple of weeks in the High Fantasy Facebook group. So if something, if you're like, hey, how come so-and-so's not on there? Well, it's because too many people kept voting for Ed Sheeran. And it messed up my day. So, this is what we've got, people. It's a highly scientific process. Without further ado, our first two people that we're going to discuss are Ramsay Bolton versus Viserys the First. Viserys is Rhaenyra's dad, not Daenerys' brother, but
okay.
Yeah, I know they all have the same names, the Targaryens. Tara, you look the most intrigued by this pairing.
I don't know if intrigued is the right word.
Who is your vote for the worst person in Westeros of those two?
Oh my gosh, absolutely Ramses. Listen, I am not saying that Viserys is the perfect person because he's obviously not. Don't get me wrong, he is our king. And Patty Considine did an amazing job portraying him, and also the writers in House of the Dragon did an amazing job of writing that character. Even Martin himself was like, I hated writing this guy, but these people did him justice. So I have to go with Ramsay. I mean, listen, this guy had his dogs chase down women for him. And, like, if that doesn't automatically get you worst person in Westeros, I don't know what does.
Okay, see, but I'm going to be the voice of dissent here because see, and here's the thing, because Ramsay goes into garbage and then the garbage gets thrown into the sea and then we fish it back out to put it on the submarine, the imploded one, and we take out all the billionaires that we didn't give a shit about and we put Ramsay on instead. Like, he's not, I hate him. However, what about the impact, right? And that's my problem here, because if we think about the worst person in Westeros, is it the person who was just the shittiest on the microcosmist level? Because in that case, there's probably a lot we don't know about. However, worst on a level of impact, we have to give it to Viserys. He started a whole ass war because he couldn't make up his mind and not remarry and just let his daughter be king. And then he remarried his daughter's best friend and then decided that was a reasonable idea and also just followed around Otto effing Hightower.
Who was way worse?
Who was way worse, but technicalities.
So I'm agreeing with you with Viserys being the worst, and I'm gonna preference this as I don't condone what he does and what he did to someone's, but him doing what he did to a favorite character puts a lot of the fandom against him. But I might have been a little bit more prepared for Jen, surprisingly, on this. I made a matrix. And I how many people did they kill? Who made the worst poor decisions? Viserys beats Bolton in that category for me. He did horrible things. He fed his stepbrother and stepmother to dogs. That's horrible, but Viserys was a result of killing thousands of people. Mm-hmm. And that makes it worse for me.
Just on a personal level, though, like, Ramsay Bolton made dogs do war crimes, and frankly, like, I don't know that he even belongs on this list because he belongs on a different list of just ew.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm right there with you on this one.
He made dogs do war crimes.
I feel like it sounds like I took the easy way out here, but honestly, I didn't because, listen, Viserys made a lot of mistakes. We know that, okay?
Yes.
But he was also our king, and he had a mostly peaceful reign, and he actually did make up his mind. He knew he wanted Rhaenyra to be queen.
Yep. Yes,
it's not his fault that Alicent, okay, listen, we're going House of the Dragon here, not Fire and Blood, because there was, like, zero story in there, but it's not his fault that Alicent, like, completely misinterpreted his last words.
True.
No, but it is his fault because he trusted Otto Hightower and kept him around and gave his daughter a position of power, thus putting him in the exact grasp of the people who were clearly trying to mess shit up.
That doesn't make him a bad person.
Listen, good old Otto was very manipulative, and I don't know that Viserys trusted him. I think Alicent was just like, but Viserys, my daddy wants to come back to court.
Yeah, see, when I think about worst person in Westeros, it's funny because I put Otto onto that category, which, sadly people voted for Ed Sheeran and not Otto.
If this was Otto versus Ramsay, I would be telling a different tale, I think.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, Otto's my number one, so it's frankly upsetting that he's not on this list because of Ed Sheeran, who might actually now be my number one for sabotaging,
For ruining the panel.
It's Ed Sheeran now.
Ed Sheeran.
This is all
We'll take
Facebook's fault.
Facebook polls seriously from now on.
There are consequences.
This is just another step of Facebook being evil.
Yes. Another election that Facebook has ruined. Anyways, we don't want to spend too much time debating our first two pairings because we have so much more to do. All right, audience. If you think that Ramsay was the worst person in Westeros, raise your hand. Okay. All right, and if you think
Yes, intent matters. I don't know who said that, but you're my new best friend.
all right, it is a clear Ramsay Bolton conclusion. That one was the easy one.
That was the number 1 versus the number 16 bracket.
All right, our next pairing is Joffrey versus Daemon. Prince versus Prince.
All right, so
No.
okay, so I don't consider Joffrey the worst person because most of his bad, poor he's almost said a word. I'm trying to say PG-13. He's a crappy person, but most of his crappy decisions are because of his mother, and I put his worst under Cersei's. That's all for it. He is. I'm not going to say Joffrey never did anything wrong, but poor parenting is his issue.
Seth, I agree that poor parenting is an issue, but once that child was definitely born a sociopath. And the thing that we very clearly get throughout the story is Cersei's frustration that Joffrey doesn't listen to her. Every terrible decision that Joffrey did, which was start a whole ass war, was on his own. Like, if he hadn't cut off Ned Stark's head because he's a crazy
person.
Heck.
Well, I still say Ned Stark getting his head cut off is Ned Stark's fault, not Joffrey's fault. But, yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna say this one thing.
I went there.
And it has nothing to do with Ned Stark's head getting cut off.
Person.
I'm gonna say this one thing. Cersei spoiled Joffrey. The highly/more abusive parent was Robert. Okay, so if we're gonna blame Joffrey, the outside of his obvious sociopathic tendencies anyway, most of that was Robert caused, not Cersei caused. So, and I'm saying that now because I feel like it's going to come back up again later. But
the other two kids, were fine.
And I guess, Jen, I should ask, are we allowed to do fire and blood stuff that's outside of House of the Dragon?
This is full book, full show spoilers.
Okay.
We're not going to pretend we don't know something.
Okay. In that case, obviously Daemon is worse.
Wait, but I'm Jon Snow, I know nothing.
I hate to say that because I just am loving Matt Damon in the show.
Oh God, he was.
Yeah.
That was the best casting of him.
And I actually don't really love him as an actor, but like him in this role and the way they're writing that role is amazing. But the things that he ends up perpetrating in Fire and Blood are way worse than like child Joffrey just being a schna little piece of shit.
See, that's my argument. Like, Joffrey's a bad person, but Daemon is worse. But
yeah, and I absolutely agree with that as well. I just disagreed with everything bad about Joffrey is because of Cersei. Like, no, that's a little. It's a sociopath. Like,
no,
that's not.
I think it's like 80.
Yes, exactly.
That's like the first on the list of, hey, if you're looking for sociopathic tendencies, do they harm animals? Yes. And I'm sorry, at that point it's just we've got deeper problems than Cersei. Okay,
so like, does Joffrey get any kind of cast for being a literal child?
No.
This is Westeros.
So he doesn't. I would say he doesn't get a pass. But what it is because he is a child and the crappy things he does are up against Daemon, who is making like fully informed on purpose decisions. That's what makes the difference.
Yeah. So there's no pass. It's just that Daemon does blood and cheese. So
Daemon's old enough to know better. Joffrey's too young to care.
Yeah.
Well, no, we'll get into the nature versus nurture argument with
I don't think he would have cared if he
Joffrey.
was older, but you know.
But imagine if Joffrey grows to be like 50. Like, how bad is?
No, he wouldn't.
Oh, he would have been a horror. I'm not saying he's a good person. I'm just saying
he wouldn't have
not
made
as
it.
bad.
Somebody would have killed him eventually. There's a reason he got killed so young. It's because he sucked.
Yeah.
All right,
But
this feels like a good
incompetence,
place
does that make
to
him better?
pause and take a vote. All in favor of Joffrey as the worst person in Westeros.
Oh.
Okay, this is a little closer.
This is gonna be tough.
Okay. All right,
think that's
all in
50%.
favor of Damon.
Oh.
Are we gonna
No, it was Joffrey.
I see all of you out there not raising a hand. I know there's at least 20 of you.
Yeah, no, please know that Damon was betrayed by the lack of vote because he really wanted the title and frankly he's offended. And I feel like that might actually disqualify him.
Even Damon's surprised that he's not the worst person. Damon's trying so hard.
Yeah, he
Deep
wants-
down inside, he's really just a squishmallow.
Oh yeah, no, he's standing out there like John Travolta me and like, what do you mean I'm not winning?
Excuse me. I feel like in this pairing in particular, am I allowed to call for a recount? Okay, I'm kidding.
We're moving along.
kidding.
We're moving along.
As
No,
soon
I mean,
as-
I'm not about to hassle our audience and tell them that they're wrong, but like they are.
As soon as the panel's over, Damien's
Not
gonna
voting
go
is your
kill
own
Cat.
bad choice.
All
Can we
right.
find some more votes
Peter
for Damon?
Littlefinger Baelish versus
We're in
Tywin
Georgia. We can do that.
Oh, this is so hard. Nami, you should go first. You haven't gotten to speak first yet. It's your turn.
Okay, so I have a very deep hatred of this one because when I was writing my own list at home, Peter Baelish was on the top. But see, while I was doing this, I come to you with another controversial take. Not because I actually believe it, but because I know that I'm here to make a discussion happen. And so I present to you, are we talking about worst person in Westeros in context of Westeros existing in a bubble and only Westeros having anything to do with it? Or are we talking about worst person to exist in Westeros in our context? Because if that's the case, by those standards, Peter Baelish is actually the best person in Westeros, because if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have the story of Game of Thrones, so we wouldn't have Westeros. Listen, I said it wasn't a good argument. I said I was just making it for fun. So I would like to enter with a rebuttal that Ned Stark is the worst person in Westeros by these standards, because by his standards, everything would have been correct and good and honorable, and there would be no story. That's all I have. I don't have a real argument, because I hate both of these people and they suck. And I'm a Sansa stan, so I genuinely cannot choose right now between the two because they both hurt my girl.
Yeah.
So yeah, take that argument, guys.
Okay, so anybody else from the panel have an argument for their favorite or least favorite?
So I'm going to say, Tywin, Peter Baelish was very selfish, and Tywin was very selfish, but Tywin would have been a better leader, and or if you had Peter as hand of the king or Tywin as hand of the king, Tywin would do a better job. So I'm going to say Peter Baelish is the worst of these two.
I would go with Tywin only because I feel like Littlefinger's machinations are very much based on his own personal history, and while they do absolutely have an effect on the world as a whole, Tywin is just this is the way things have to be done, and it's because of him. It's because of his treatment of, honestly, his daughter and how she was lesser to him, even though she was technically his oldest child. That Cersei, he's a big part of why Cersei turned into a mess, and he's literally almost the entire part of why Tyrion turned into a mess. And I don't think Jaime didn't suffer from that relationship either. So I feel with him, it's not also just personal. He also was in the background, kind of talking smack to the Mad King and causing issues there. It's weird because Littlefinger should technically be the chaotic one of the two, but in the end it actually might be Tywin who was more so. But either way, Tywin is worse than Littlefinger. And I freaking hate saying that because I really don't like Littlefinger.
See, I disagree. I think that Tywin is better because he's a force of order, and yes, he's making some selfish decisions because he wants to promote the Lannisters and things like that, but he's doing that because he genuinely thinks the Lannisters should be in charge of things and they're going to be really good at it. And he's a good hand of the king. The realm is strong when he's in charge of it. There's not a lot of great things happening on an individual level, but the realm is strong. Peter Baelish murders people for fun and tries to seduce his best friend's daughter because he thinks that she looks like her. Peter Baelish is just a force of chaos because he wants to make chaos happen. He has no real plan other than, I want Sansa because she reminds me of something that I didn't get to have when I was younger. But Tywin actually wants to rule a country and do leadership things. He's not a good person. By no means is he a good person, but he has a Machiavellian sense to him, where he's good at the job at least and understands what the job is.
Evil is evil.
I want to bring up so this is my real argument now. I'm sorry you had to sit through my fake one. But so I think at the very beginning someone had said something in passing about both of these characters being inherently selfish. But I think the difference between them is that it manifests in very different ways. Tywin is looking out for himself, but in his process of looking out for himself, he's being very logical about this and saying, no, but I do genuinely think the Lannisters would be the best to rule here. And he tries to make that be the case. And, when you think about it objectively, technically it does make sense. The Lannisters have the gold. They would be good rulers if they were actually good people. Unfortunately, Tywin is not a good people, which is part of the problem. However, when it comes down to Littlefinger, the problem isn't necessarily that he's ruled by chaos. The problem is that he is purely ruled by selfishness, and he isn't taking any outside input on that. He refuses to accept that he isn't good at things, and because of that, it fuels him in a very spiteful and rage and evil way in order to mess shit up just because he isn't getting his own. He's the person who was told you're not good enough, and instead of trying to improve himself and become better, he just went, no, I am good enough, screw you. Whereas Tywin was like, you know, I am good enough, and you know what, I'm also going to be evil about it. And you're just like, Tywin, come on.
Listen, I just can't stomach hypocrites, and Tywin's tunnels to the brothels. I can't stomach hypocrites. So,
Well, at least it's not Baelish's incel energy.
yeah. Oh, I feel like he knows he's got that energy, though. Listen.
So I have a good analogy, I think, for these two. If I were playing a board game with them, Tywin would be playing to win, and Peter would be playing to make everyone else lose.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's my problem with Peter. Like, you know, he would
right,
purposely not. Yeah, that's not
Except we won, we beat them.
I mean, I was really just trying to like not be the one person who didn't go for Littlefinger, but I guess I just fine.
I'm just here to stir the pot.
Yeah, I was trying to not be the one person to go for Ramses, but...
Well, he also gave Sansa to Ramsay.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, no, it is a little bit.
Oh, that's show only, but he did give another girl to Ramsay in the books too. So yeah, he grows.
Yeah, he had lookalikes to give out.
He's bad. All of them are bad. That's
All
why we're
right.
here.
Yes. Yeah. They're all bad on this list except for Ed Sheeran.
All,
Especially one.
all in favor of
Worst.
Peter Baelish, raise your hand.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, just because I want to see. All in favor of Tywin.
We'll see you guys
Hey,
outside.
we still got a handful. Thank you for your loyalty, says the person who changed sides at the last minute, which is a very Littlefinger move.
Amanda,
That was way more of a knockout than I thought it would be.
you were
Our
the
next
chosen one.
pairing, Walder Frey versus Cersei Lannister.
I don't know if I can talk.
Jennifer, why did you do this to us?
Because it's funny.
Okay, quite accepted.
Your tears taste like delicious candy.
This particular pairing is just really freaking rough, okay? Because Cersei is a crappy person. The problem is, even when Cersei thinks she's in charge, she is always being manipulated by everybody around her. So is Cersei terrible? Sure, she is. However, Walder Frey. Do we even need to start on Walder Frey? How many wives has he had? How many children does he have? How crappy is he to his children? And listen, Tywin might have put the Red Wedding idea in his head, but he freaking orchestrated it, okay? Or Tywin and Bolton, okay? But he orchestrated it. So that's all I have to say is Red Wedding and I guess, no, that can't be all I have to say because also, ew with the wives, okay? This dude.
That's not evil though.
So my counterpoint is
That.
who hates Walder Frey because they killed our favorite character? That's not the stance to make them the
I
worst.
could literally care less about Robb Stark. This is not about Robb Stark. If it's about anybody, it's about Daisy Mormon.
Yeah, no.
Catelyn.
Frankly, I care less about Robb Stark. I also put Catelyn out in the trash can because I'm really, really sorry. Instead of fighting the man who you thought cheated on you, you fought a child. Like, man, sit down.
Okay,
do I
okay.
acknowledge, however, do I acknowledge that she is living in a feudal society, medieval society, in which women have no agency and her only fair target is the child? Yes. Does she still suck despite that being the reality for doing what she did because she could have done something different even though it would have been really difficult for her? Also, yes. Sorry, I ran out of breath there. I have a lot of feelings on Catelyn.
Okay. Listen, we're gonna put all these other characters out to the side and say Grey Wind.
Yeah.
Kill the dog, man.
Okay, but like then Ramsay still wins. Ramsay didn't just kill dogs. Ramsay made dogs do war crimes.
I already voted for over, Ramsey. I'm not the audience you're talking to here.
Sorry, my bad.
So I'm voting Cersei on this one just because of the impact to the realm of the two.
So I think, again, I feel like I'm betraying my Viserys stance in the middle, in the beginning here, because I think I've convinced myself now that Ramses is worse than Viserys, because I do feel bad for Viserys, because that man clearly just didn't want to rule a realm and wanted to build toy trains and didn't even know, like... He was like, I have the king. Am I allowed to do things?
He's the king. He's got all the money in the world for Warhammer 40K, okay?
No. He didn't just play Warhammer 40K. He made Warhammer and then also made the tiny trains and put the Warhammers on the trains and I feel like this is possible.
Hashtag plausible.
Got away from you. It was a great metaphor, I swear.
For him, you look at he was a poor leader, and there's the speculation that the Iron Throne, there's a magic in it, and every time he got scratched, it got infected, and he died because the Iron Throne killed him. Kind of stuff for it, and that gets into speculation of what's going on with it. And I don't want to get into that when we're talking about worse.
Actually, though, you bring up an interesting point. Because if we stand by the Iron Throne killed Viserys because he was not worthy, some part of us has to acknowledge that Cersei was maybe kind of worthy because she served as regent. The throne hasn't killed her.
Yeah, she didn't get any. She didn't lose fingers, eyes, anything like that.
Eyes, just casually. Yeah. But no, I have to actually stand by this one here. The reason Viserys sucks more than Cersei in my mind is because his poor decisions mostly came from himself. Is he being manipulated by Otto? Yes, but ultimately he is the king, and he does actually have power and agency in this situation. Cersei,
let's make sure we're talking about Walder.
Yeah, I was going to say, except we're not talking Viserys v. Cersei, we're talking Walder Frey.
We are. I'm losing the plot. But so Cersei...
It's okay, so did Game of Thrones.
George Martin also got a lot of votes in the original poll.
But so Cersei here is definitely a very bad character, but so much of the reason that she is bad is because how poorly she has been raised by her father figure and how poorly she has been treated by the men around her in her life and how much she is being manipulated by the other men around her. Cersei is bad at making bad decisions and doing bad things that impact the realm a lot. However, how many of her decisions have actually been her own? I would argue almost none of them. Which is why...
It's still her fault.
Don't deprive her of agency.
I also think Walder Frey is more selfish than Cersei.
Which is the problem. So, Walder... Tywin tries to manipulate Walder, but Walder is still the person who sits down and goes, here we have this principle of something that has ruled Westeros for years, the idea of guest right. And one could say that in the environment of Westeros, the concept of a guest right is almost as sacred as the Seven or the Old Gods or any of the religions that they happen to be following. He basically takes an ancient traditional teaching and says, actually, no, I'm going to stomp all over that for my own selfish needs and my own gain, which is why Walder is worse than Cersei in this case, because he betrays the principles of his culture and his world in order to sort of elevate himself here.
All right, counterpoint, Cersei blew up a whole cathedral of
Counterpoint, that only happened in the show.
Yeah,
I'm using both.
But are we considering the last couple seasons of that show canon? Because I don't know that we should.
I was.
Okay, real
Everything.
quick. What I do want to say is that House Frey, their words are no God but us. Yeah. And I literally just made that up right now because we don't know what House Frey words are. But that's what I'm saying. That's how Walder Frey feels about his life.
Sarah, I fully was sitting here for a solid second going, wait, how did I miss that? Did I miss that? Am I that bad of a reader?
All right, let us do the vote. Audience, if you think Walder Frey is the worst person in Westeros.
I swear to fucking God.
No, really?
Okay, this one's going to be close.
A bunch of you better not vote this time.
All right, if you think it's Cersei, raise your hand.
Wow.
It's close, but I'm going to count. Cersei.
It's close. It's close. It's about as close as Ed Sheeran got to this list.
Quit adding it.
She doesn't get a pass.
Did you add him or did somebody else?
Somebody else did.
Jennifer, I think you need to stop trusting people with that power.
Yes, exactly.
No writing votes next.
I could describe my process, but we would run out of time to argue about it. All right.
HBO writers not make that list.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. So our advancing are Ramsay, Joffrey, Peter Baelish, and Cersei. Okay. So it is Ramsay versus Joffrey now.
The battle of the sociopaths.
It's the sequel to the Battle of the Bastards. This time with more lighting than the Battle of Winterfell. Thank you, I'm here all night.
Who's gonna dodge and who's gonna get shot by a bunch of arrows?
Well, that's just not knowing when to zag when you should zing.
Exactly.
All right, panelists, what do you think? Who is the worst person between Joffrey and Ramsay?
Ramsay. I honestly, I think this is unfortunately the point where the age comes into play, because Ramsay, obviously Joffrey knew what he was doing, but like I think that there's just, he's still a freaking child, whereas Ramsay is a full-on adult. And also, let's be real, he forcefully married Lady Dustin, locked her in a tower, and like kind of forgot about her, just like D&D kind of forget about things all the time. And she ate her own fingers, okay? Like, listen, Joffrey did some crappy stuff, but I don't think he would lock somebody in a tower and forget about them. Maybe it would have been better if he had, but he didn't, so I gotta go with Ramsay.
So he would straight up torture, he would have the mountain dismember them. Like, it's Ramsay did his, but Joffrey would do a more active approach.
Okay, actually, here's the question: what's worse, the Joffrey who had other people torture people for him, or Ramsay who did the torturing himself?
The one that did the torture.
I am voting Ramsay on this one.
Yeah, I think my whole thing is that the question that I have, which is going to sort of answer my stance on this one, is would Joffrey have been as bad as Ramsay if he had grown up? Which then leads me to say that obviously it's Ramsay because I was even asking that question. Again, he made dogs do war crimes. Also, like that lady ate her fingers, but like the dog war crimes.
Crossbowing kittens.
You don't F with dogs and not find out.
Listen,
Okay?
if our body count here was cats, like we know who'd be winning. But unfortunately, our body count is humans.
So the argument comes down to, are you a dog lover or a cat lover?
Well, actually, I don't even think it does because I am a cat lover and I'm still going with Ramsay.
I think we also need to consider the level of calculation. Joffrey is impulsive. There's no real plan or cunning to what he does other than how can I hurt someone right now the most. Like there's no real plan to anything he does. He's just like, I'm mad at you. Like, beat this woman for me. Ramsay is calculating and planning. He stretches things out. He enjoys what he's doing.
That was so bad. Well done.
So I have
there's definitely a difference in sociopathy there. The impulsivity versus the straight up serial killer vibe that Ramsay has.
A++ for sure.
So I have a little bit of an argument for Joffrey. If he hadn't have killed Ned, a lot of the stuff Ramsay was doing potentially would not have happened.
No, he still marries that girl.
Yeah, listen, the Lady Dustin thing might not have happened, but before Ned died, he was already sending his hunting dogs after
he was
women, and he was slaying people. He was just like capturing peasants on the random and playing them in his basement for funsies.
Would have been different, but they would have still been crimes.
Yeah, he would still be doing bad things, but all the wars started because of Ned's head falling off, and that's Joffrey's fault.
That's a huge simplification, I think.
It is. It's fair.
So, by that definition, once again, we're going back to it's Peter Baelish, but also, we have already rejected the impact versus intent argument by selecting Ramsay over Viserys in the first place, because again, Ramsay's body count is negligible compared to Viserys.
Technically, the war started because of Lisa Rin.
Anyway, okay, oh my gosh, we're going
There's
to
a lot of blame here.
We're going in circles, Jen. Should we take a vote?
All right, you guys ready for a vote?
Ready.
All right, Ramsay. Okay.
I mean, I've not been raising my hand, but maybe I
You
think in
can.
these final
All
rounds
right.
I have to.
Joffrey. Okay, all right.
Wow.
I've been hearing y'all mumbling in that corner over there. Don't think I don't see you causing rabble-rousing trouble.
You know, I think it's just really exciting that in all things Westeros, there's something that we can count on. The unpopularity of the Lannisters. They can't win anything.
Jen, I think I saw about 20,000 votes over in the corner for Joffrey.
All right.
In Atlanta, you're gonna say that?
Oh, man. What an exciting time to be alive. Anyways, that's an entirely different panel. All right, Peter Baelish versus Cersei Lannister.
I think the most popular Lannister has advanced in the rankings far enough. Because again, I return to my original argument, which is Peter is inherently selfish. He is doing everything because he feels he didn't get his due, therefore F everyone else. Cersei, despite also being inherently selfish and a terrible person, is doing a lot of this stuff because she loves her kids and she wants her kids to be safe. And she wants Myrcella and Tommen and Joffrey to be safe. And yeah, Joffrey is the worst child ever, but Cersei is still trying to do good by her kids, which is ultimately a good motivation. So here I say we got to bring it down to the motivation and say Peter Baelish, because frankly, if Cersei loses to Peter Baelish, none of you guys have hearts.
Okay, here, and I'm capitalizing on some of what Nami just said, because here's my thought about it. The capacity for love. Cersei loves her children. Listen, she is a terrible person, okay? She's a terrible person. But what she's doing, like Nami said, is all for love of her children. Peter Baelish has never loved anybody but himself. He thinks he loved Catelyn. No, he had a childhood obsession crush on Catelyn. Every person that he thinks he's had some sort of attachment to has literally just been like, how can this person like further who I am? And I think Catelyn was probably the least of that, because I don't think he went into it thinking that way about her. But he thought she belonged to him in a way. And then when he couldn't have her, he went and slept with her sister.
And then he tries to sleep with her daughter because she looks like her.
Yeah, exactly. Creepy AF. And also, again, the capacity for love. While Cersei might be a terrible frickin' person who does terrible frickin' things, so is Littlefinger. But Cersei does, in fact, have the capacity to love. She might not love Jaime the way, I mean, she shouldn't love Jaime. Okay, let's be real. But she might not love Jaime, but she does absolutely love her children. And she wants to take care of her. I don't think she loves her father, or she certainly doesn't love Tyrion. I want to throw out the idea of Cersei not loving Tyrion, okay? Because, like, please let's not focus on that. What I want to focus on is Cersei loves her children. Everybody throws the Tyrion Cersei thing in my face when I try to talk about this, but like, dude, they're freaking siblings, man. Have you always loved your siblings? Probably not.
Having the capacity for love doesn't mean you have to love everybody.
But she has the capacity for actual true love, whereas Littlefinger does not. Gavel drop.
Yeah. No, Cersei came into her marriage with Robert prepared maybe not to love him, but to at least have a real relationship with him.
Listen, I live in a very special place on AO3, which involves happy AUs for Cersei, in which she came into her marriage ready to love Robert, and Robert was like not the worst, and Cersei has a happy ending in which she doesn't fuck her brother, because remember, incest is only wincest if you're a Targaryen. I'm sorry, did I ruin the rating?
Didn't that happen before she married Robert, though?
And just to be very clear, in case nobody picked up on this, there is actually textual evidence that Cersei went into her marriage with Robert thinking he is handsome, he is the king, and she wanted to be in love. And Robert was an abusive person from the first. He literally called her by Lyanna's name on their wedding night. So I am not saying that excuses Cersei's mistakes, but what I am saying is not only does she love her children, but she has the capacity for love, and Littlefinger doesn't. That's it.
Oh, absolutely agreed. I think the worst thing about Cersei is that, could you imagine how powerful Robert could have been as a king and as an effective ruler if he had actually treated Cersei well? Because Cersei then would have been in his pocket. Tywin Lannister would have been further in his pocket. Like, Robert could have actually been a good king, but you know, why isn't Robert on this list? Is it because of Ed Sheeran?
It's always Ed Sheeran's fault. This is the new hashtag plausible. Hashtag blame Ed Sheeran.
Yeah, okay, next year I'll make sure Ed Sheeran's on the bracket.
I'm agreeing with the panelists because, like, you know, Cersei was going to do her duty to the realm. She still did that for her children.
Yep.
As bad as that was, kind of so forth. So I am voting Peter on this one for me. And I completely agree with the panelists. I have no argument to add to this because I agree with them.
Come on, please join us in the we love Cersei, but we also hate Cersei, but we love Cersei, but we also hate Cersei agenda.
And we, like, no matter what her issues are, they're lesser than Littlefinger.
I don't even want to
All right,
stir
let's
the
go
pot
ahead.
on it.
Oh, sorry,
You're like, the pot is
I swear to
correct.
God.
Yeah, the pot.
All right, let's go ahead and take our vote. All in favor of Peter Baelish?
Thank you guys for restoring my faith in humanity.
Listen.
All
Cersei
in
would have
favor of Cersei Lannister?
Thank you for letting us profile.
Listen, I need you guys to understand, like, Tara was living in absolute fear that, like, Cersei would win, and they were very, very ready to fist fight every single one of you, and we're very
Oh my God, I
happy we don't have to do
cosplayed Cersei once.
that. Technically, like, twice, maybe, I think.
Technically a lot of times.
Technically, like, 17 times.
Okay, it's okay. I cosplay Varys. So.
All right,
Hey!
drum roll. Our final matchup is Ramsay versus Peter.
So I again have a really, really, really no, actually it's not really that good. I'm
Just say it,
exaggerating.
just say
No,
it.
yeah, okay. You're right, Jennifer. I maintain making dogs do war crimes is not great. And we really shouldn't make any animals do war crimes, but especially dogs, because they're very good and they're just trying their best and they just want to give you hugs and kisses and they just want scritches. And you shouldn't make dogs do war crimes because then they don't get hugs and kisses and scritches.
They're still giving hugs and kisses just with their mouths.
No, that's not hugs and kisses. That's bites. There's a separate word for this.
That's
It's a
hugging
teeth
with
hug.
your mouth.
It's a teeth hug.
Teeth hug? Said to Jennifer, I am really concerned with how y'all are living your lives. Like, do you get teeth hugged often? Like, should we be worried? But so, here's the thing, right? For all of Ramsay's, like, sociopathic, psychopathic, sadistic nonsense, there is an argument that could be made that Ramsay is still doing this out of love for his father and out of a desire to get recognized. I acknowledge that it's a bad argument, and I acknowledge that the odds are slim to none. However, it is possible. It is highly improbable, but it is possible that Ramsay just wants Daddy to love him. Whereas Peter Baelish, I hate Peter. Please quote Peter.
So I'm actually going to agree a little bit with you on that because, you know, he's a Snow and he just wanted Daddy to love him. So I agree with that statement. But everything else does not overshadow how bad Littlefinger is.
So yes, my God, I can't believe I've reached this point in my life and in my evening. But I think we have to go back to the actual overall cost. Ramsay is an evil POS, okay? He is. But so is Baelish, and the difference is Ramsay's actions tend to affect a much smaller number of people, whereas Baelish does some really crappy things over and over and over again. And like, I don't want to say we excused them in previous matchups because we did not. But what Baelish is doing, his need to be kind of in charge, regardless of whether or not Ramsay just wants Daddy to love him, which I do think is part of the problem. Obviously, Ramsay does some really disgusting, awful things. Baelish also sexually assaults people. He also uses Lysa and then murders her. He also is probably poisoning his stepson.
You know,
he also pulled all this background stuff in King's Landing that kind of led to a lot of where things are today. So I think, like, while Ramsay might do the technically more disgusting things, he is affecting a smaller group of people, whereas Baelish is just pulling strings left and right while also being disgusting.
I think you also bring up a really, really good point here, which is the point that we had brought up initially with Joffrey versus Ramses, which is who is the worst person? The one who does the sadistic thing and the terrible thing, like the torturer, or the person who commands the torture? But here's the thing. Baelish is both. And that's the difference. And I think that's why Baelish is worse, because Baelish does both. And I have to say, 2 crimes is worse than 1 crime if both crimes are gross. If
Or maybe we should say, like, 2
gross.
crimes is worse than, like, 1.5 crimes.
1 and, like, 3/4 crimes.
I like
1.82 crimes.
I like your
1.823
statement
crimes.
about like the region. Ramsay is the worst person in the north. Peter is the worst person in Westeros.
Yes.
Yes, there you go.
I think that's how
Snap.
we boil it down.
Seth, would you like to drop the mic? I believe you.
I feel, yeah. Pa.
Pa.
Yeah, the pantomime. Don't actually do it because
Wow,
The mics in
in trouble.
this, the sound system in this room is already bad enough. We don't need to make it worse.
Yeah, I'm not gonna make IT pissed off.
The sound system is actually the worst person in Westeros.
So you, with the glasses, you had a really good thing that you said. I don't think everybody else caught it. Can you say it again?
That if Ramsay was a commoner, he would do all of the exact same things. Whereas if Peter had no base of power, he would probably be a less than pleasant guy, but he would just be the annoying dude at your bar.
But we actually don't know that, though.
Yeah.
You say that Ramsay would have done the same terrible things on a smaller impact. Peter would have done the same terrible things on a smaller impact. Would he have fallen in love with a lady and then been upset because the lady didn't marry him? No, but he would have fallen in love with a peasant girl and he would have been upset because the peasant girl didn't marry him, and then he would sleep with her sister, and then he would, try to sleep with her future daughter. Like,
Yeah, but Ramsay's still murdering all these people. Like, he is torturing all these people no matter what because he's a sociopath.
So Peter wasn't a commoner. He was barely noble. His family's holdings are like rocky things. Yeah, barely a castle.
But he climbed because of who he was and because
Exactly.
Yeah, on
on
his
again,
merit.
I
Yeah.
think that, like, I don't know if you're trying to detract from what he said or add to it, but yes, that's exactly that. Peter Baelish, no matter who he started out as, he had ambition. It was not the good kind of ambition, y'all. Okay.
oh yeah, I'm so sorry. Were you meaning that from the point of view? Wait, no. Never mind.
Okay, so
There's an orca out there attacking Peter Baelish's yacht, okay?
how Spalton's flag is a flayed man, and their words are our blades are sharp. This is a nature versus nurture situation. If Ramsay was born as a peasant, he wouldn't have been born into this area where it's okay to have a flayed man on your flag. Like, who puts that on your flag?
A vampire, according to theories. Hashtag plausible theories. Listen, I'm bringing it back.
it's the new Twitter insignia.
Elon Musk is the worst for Westeros.
Take that X and make it red, and there you go. Wow. That's actually the real mic drop of the evening.
Right. Yeah, green shirt.
Yeah, Ramsay's terrible. I think we can all agree on that. Peter knows that Ramsay is terrible and is still willing to use it.
Correct.
And still sends a girl, whether you've watched the show or read the books, in both cases, sends a very young child to be married to
him a
this
child
person.
bride.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, also, I mean, of course, in the show, it's Sansa, but, like, in the books, he has taken a young girl from the household of the Starks because she came there with her dad to King's Landing, and he has done very disgusting things to her to train her, and then he sends
I
her
forgot
off to
about
be
that
married
part.
to Ramsay. Okay? So, yes. Exactly. Thank you. The person who is doing the worst things is the person who is also allowing the terrible person to do the bad things.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, we have a hand up back here.
All right, so I was Peter, but I'm going to say this. Roose Bolton is basically Peter in that he killed a king of the North, manipulated his position, and was still killed by Ramsay, who is technically, as a result, then worse than Joffrey is. I think Ramsay has the potential to be worse, because you're talking about opportunity.
Roose Bolton isn't on the menu.
Yeah,
sir.
and I think the problem here is that you are correct because Roose Bolton is that bad. And if we were saying Roose Bolton versus Peter Baelish, we would have a much closer contest here. However, we have already acknowledged potential though, and potential doesn't matter. We're talking about the impact as it stands right now. And I still think even if we do factor in potential, that Baelish is still worse because Baelish still has that much more ambition.
And it's Ed Sheeran's fault that we
It
didn't
is
get
Ed
Roose
Sheeran's
Bolton
fault.
versus Baelish.
You know, I think, Jennifer, I actually hate to say it now, but I think Facebook might have been onto something.
Maybe. All right, black and red in the back.
I was just thinking back to the War Games example, and Ramsay is absolutely going out for himself and for the Bolton name, and Littlefinger is, again, trying to make everyone else lose. Like, Ramsay has a goal and a loyalty to himself and to the Bolton image. Littlefinger's just out here messing shit up.
Yeah, I like the board game, and I keep going back to the board game analogy. You know, Ramsay also likely over Monopoly would be the one to flip the table and then try to slit your throat.
It's the reason we can't play board games at Thanksgiving anymore.
Yeah. You get the red Thanksgiving at that point.
All right, gray shirt in the front.
I just think that maybe Ramsay is the worst person in Westeros, but Peter is the worst person for Westeros. So it's like, which one is the debate?
That's good. I like that.
All right. If you did not hear what she said that Ramsay is the worst person in Westeros, but Peter is the worst for Westeros.
I can't necessarily disagree, but I'm still leaning toward the person who is actually awful and trying to manipulate people and using someone like Ramsay knowing what he is. You know what I mean? But I do really like that point. That's a very, very good point.
Right. Chunky bracelets.
When you're prosecuting a murder, you consider intent. And I would just like to say that Peter Baelish is doing everything he does for personal gain, but Ramsay Bolton is doing it because he enjoys it.
To be honest, I do think Baelish enjoys it at times too.
I think it's very difficult to decide to do something that effed up for personal gain unless you also enjoy it. Because having ambition is not a negative quality. Being ambitious has never been a bad thing. But being willing to...
But if you don't care.
No, pause. It has never been a bad thing on its own in a bubble. But ambition with the willingness to hurt others and trample others in the process of gaining your ambition, that's the problem. And I think Baelish is the sort of person who, yes, he's ambitious, and he's more than willing to do all these terrible things for it, because it's like, yeah, doesn't he? I don't even know that he's like conscious of the fact that hurting people is a bad thing. Peter Baelish is the type of person that I look at him, and he's probably that person who thought as a child that they were the only person who was real and everybody around them was a simulation. Whereas Ramsay knows that other people had feelings and experiences, and he hurts them because he knows that they will experience pain. Whereas Peter is like, I am the only real human being in the world. And I think that's real fucked up.
Okay, I have to interject with this, even though it's going to sound like
Jared,
a weird aside, but Peter Baelish is the person who was like, I had to pay off my student loans, so everybody else should have to pay off theirs too. That's it.
All right, green shirt.
I was basically kind of what you just got at. That, like, you know, Ramsay is like very much was facilitated his whole life. He was this piece of shit, but his father allowed him. He was this bad person, and his father kind of used him and encouraged that, and kind of raised him. You know, we're judging him based on our morals because the society we live in, the people that raised us, taught us what was right and what was wrong. And the person that was supposed to do that for Ramsay encouraged all these horrible things, allowed him to get away with things that he would not have been able to get away with if he wasn't raised by a noble family. Whereas Peter, he was around wonderful people that should have shown him the right thing to do.
And he still chose to be a dick.
chose to do the bad things because it was maybe easier or he liked it.
He woke up that morning, every morning, and chose violence.
Yep. All right, we are very close on time, so I know I still have some hands up in the audience. I'm sorry, I'm not going to get to any of you. Sorry.
The worst person.
Wait a minute, was that Jimmy that said that?
Let's go ahead and do our vote. If you think that Ramsay Bolton is the worst person in Westeros, raise your hand.
This is more than I
think we're
thought.
gonna actually.
All of you people who were not voting earlier, you better be voting.
All in favor of Peter Baelish.
Oh yeah. Little finger.
I think
It's barely more, but it's more, I think.
Yeah, it's
Of
close.
course it is.
It's fingers.
Yeah!
I will say though, the real worst person in Westeros might be the people who never voted for anything.
Exercise your voting rights, guys.
All right, if you enjoyed this panel, please rate us in the app. If you did not enjoy this panel, smash your phone on the ground. All right, see you guys later.
Thank you for listening to the Geek Saga podcast. If you like what you heard, please check out other Geek Saga entertainment endeavors, including the Sagas and Sass webcast and podcast and Ice and Fire Con.